We are here. We are together. I appreciate y'all. I sent that link out at the last minute. That is a sign of this time change and all that comes with making it. I was like, oh my God. We are here. Thank y'all. Love seeing y'all lovely faces. We got some good stuff tonight. So we're going to get to it at 7:03. 7:03 tonight. Y'all have no idea how excited I am to see y'all. Y'all have been riding with me all three of these webinars. Y'all have been showing up for me. What's up, Watson family? What's up, Beppy? I see you. I appreciate you. I appreciate y'all energy. Samantha, I'm glad you're here. I'm just glad y'all are here with me. I appreciate it. Because I do this because I'm committed to it. I've shared a little bit of my story each time we've gotten on here, but I think it's important as we talk about this last one for y'all to understand, like, I do this from my heart. Like, it is, I feel my responsibility as a first generation Black woman to go to college, to pave the way for others coming behind me. I work a full-time job. I have steady income, but I do run this side gig because it is my way of giving back. It's also what I consider my retirement plan, because I don't plan to work for somebody forever. So I want to build my business. And in building my business, I'm building a business that is from my heart and of service to my community, to the next generation. And so I'm doing this as a way of building myself, building the students that I come in contact with, building the legacy of families that send their kids to college. So that's why I'm here. I have done webinars one at a time before, but the college planning process is so dense, so many pieces, so many parts, that I was like, okay, we're going to cover this in a series. And I'm actually doing this fall series. And then I have a spring series, which is going to be more focused on, for seniors, they will have gotten acceptance letters. So we will talk about how to pay for college. For those that are juniors, sophomores, and below, we will talk about how to spend the summer, to make sure they're doing quality things. So that's what the spring sessions will be about. But this fall session, or the fall series session, was about, seniors going into, they got to get them essays done. They got to get the school list tight. So that's what the focus was. And so we will get into tonight's session. And before I share my screen with y'all, before I pull it up all the way, let me share my screen with y'all. All right, so here we are, making sure the college list fits you, fits the student that is working on this. So as I go through tonight, come on, lovely deal. Gotta love technology. Here we are. What we're talking about is how to approach that college, building that college list with purpose, right? Not just saying you want to go to school, or I don't know, or so many times, the college planning process feels like it's dragging you, which is what I said in one of the emails leading up to tonight. And the more knowledge you have about what's expected throughout the process, the more you feel empowered in making the decisions that you make. So we're going to approach that college list with purpose. There's some categories we need to think about that's going to some of it is about like short term and what your preferences are, but other parts of it is about making the best long term decision for you. What that criteria should be for you in terms of looking at the list, and then how to weigh so all the things coming at you in terms of what school should be on the list. So this is my crew. Y'all have seen them kind of individually, but 2022 was a big year for our family. You see my ex-husband, my son, and my daughter. And 2022, she graduated from college. She graduated from Pepperdine, and he graduated from high school. So I had two graduations. We were running around crazy from California back here to Georgia in the same week. So it was real crazy. And no, I'm not telling the truth. Actually, her graduation was the same week as his prom. So he ended up missing her graduation because we didn't want him to miss his prom. So that was the craziness. And then we came when she graduated, we flew back and did his graduation as a family. So they are two totally different kids for the parents on this call. Their motivations are different, their gifts and skills are different. And so that was definitely reflected in their choices. So Gabby, as a student, was high achieving, self-driven, organized, putting in effort wherever she needed to put in effort to be at the top of her class. And she was. She was competitive about that, about academics. And so she was always doing stuff on her own. I didn't even have to think about her much in terms of academics. We did end up getting a tutor for her in terms of math to help her in some areas where she was weak, but she was driven and she wanted to do well, and it showed. It showed in her grades. She did excellent, and we actually got a letter. I tried to find that letter for y'all from Harvard, but she got a letter from Harvard in probably like the 10th grade because she had taken the SAT done well enough for them to already be thinking about recruiting her. So that was Gabby. My Jonathan, on the other hand, is my creative all the way. He's a lot like his mama, except I was a little more driven than him. He was, I'm gonna do what I got to do. The bare minimum. I'm not going too much above that. He's a smart kid, so he didn't have to put much effort in, which gets challenging at times. So his grades, his grades would only suffer. And I did a lot of parent teacher conferences, parents, to make sure he stayed up with doing the work and turning in the work. So there was some chasing in terms of that. But him getting material was not too hard for him. But he wasn't putting putting forth much effort. So his college list, and he also watched his sister's college choice and the many discussions we were having around financing her college education because she decided she wanted to explore schools out of state. And I actually encouraged her to explore schools internationally, but she landed on California as the location she wanted to be in. She actually wanted to go to UCLA, but she didn't get in, but which we were surprised by. And Notre Dame was on her list, and she didn't get in Notre Dame. And I bring that up because both I went to Notre Dame and my ex-husband, their father, went to Notre Dame. So we were surprised. And I served on the board for 15 years, but I guess I hadn't given them enough money. So she did not get into Notre Dame. But Pepperdine was on the list because she wanted to be in California. And she got into Pepperdine. and they actually went for a visit. My ex-husband took them out to California to visit several California schools. And although she was thinking UCLA, she realized when she got out there how big it was. And she didn't want to be on such a big campus versus Pepperdine, which has about 8,000, 8 to 10,000 students, much smaller than UCLA's 20 plus thousand, maybe almost 30,000 students. So she found it to be a good fit for her. So I just talked to you about how different they are and that how that left Jonathan choosing schools in state. He was like, I don't want to go too far. But I also think he didn't want to put too much energy into it. Again, just his personality. And then Gabby was exploring wide and far. And then there are the influences that other people weigh in on, right? I think Notre Dame was on Gabby's list because we said it should be on your list, but it wasn't something she was fully excited about. She was glad to do it because we said so. So even as I say that now, I said to her then, and I'll say now, like at the end of this process, you have to want to go to this school. So even though Notre Dame's on your list because we say so and we're alumni, you have to, at the end of the day, if they accept you, you got to decide whether you want to go or not. And that's what this part is about. Like, this is a part of our village that was at Jonathan's graduation. And there's lots of voices. There's lots of people weighing in on where you could go. You know, if you're a part of a fraternity or sorority, a favorite teacher might have some weigh in. Other family members who have gone to college may have some weigh in. And those things actually may influence your child's interest. So they're going to hear from other voices. And that's not a bad thing because it gives them places to explore. But once they explore, it's ultimately about them. It's ultimately about the student. It's ultimately about you if you're the student, where you want to go to spend the next 4 years of your life, 4 years or more of your life. So let's get into what to consider. So I always say that choosing a college is a bit of art and a bit of science. So it's kind of like some magic in there. Hence, you see that this fire of magic happening. It's it's some of how you feel, some of how you think. It's all those things weighing in to help you make this decision. So you pay attention to if you're on a visit or if you're doing some research and are attracted by some of the things that you see about that school. You gotta see how you feel about it just as much as what someone says is a good thing to consider. So remember that it's some science, some art, a little bit of magic in it all for you to come up with the right place. Oh, because I think this is important to say too. When I chose Notre Dame, I had no clue, but I can tell you that was the right place for me to be. Like I was, it was fate that I ended up there. I didn't understand it. I even learned my mother's maiden name is McDermott, which is of Irish roots. So I was born in New Orleans. My mother was born in rural Louisiana, St. Francisville, and but her grandfather was a McDermott, and that was her maiden name, McDermott. Um, and so we have Irish in our roots. And so when I went to Notre Dame, that's when I learned that. So I didn't know that before leaving New Orleans, although these freckles that I have are a dead giveaway in some ways. But I learned about my Irish roots. And so that's a part of the magic, I think, and part of the fate of me getting to Notre Dame. So listen to your feelings as you're going through this process. So we're getting right into the things you should be considering. So hopefully you've heard uh, this part of the process of you having reach schools, match schools, and safety schools. Your reach schools are where your qualifications are things. It's a school that you're reaching for. Like you don't fall in that middle bracket of what their incoming students look like, what 50% or more um, of their students coming in look like. So you're going to be a bit of that school is going to be a bit of a reach for your academic index for all of the, and that's where things again will be tipped by your essay, your extracurriculars, because you may be. I knew a fencer at Notre Dame. He was a Black student that was a fencer, and they didn't have any other Black fencer. So that specialty of his gave him a leg up because they wanted to elevate their fencing program, and he was really good at the sport. And so that's the thing that tips him over. So as you do those reach schools, your specialty will come into play. The schools that match is just what that says. Like those schools match your academic profile. Those schools, you're going to fit right in there with what their current student, incoming students look like over the past several years. So it's going to be a natural fit for your academic profile. And then the safety schools are the schools that you're above what their average student is. You Yeah, it's easy for you to get in there because your academic profile is stronger than their average student. So those are the three types of schools you want to have on your list. And then we're going to talk about next how many schools. So you got the three categories now: your reach, your match, and your safety. Um, Now we're going to get into how many, and the consideration here is just what we talked about a little bit ago. Are you staying in state? Are you considering going out of state or internationally? And then those things help you figure out how many schools. So if you're staying in state, you can have up to 6 schools. You can get those 2 reach, 2 match, or 2 safety schools, and then have your up to 6 there. And I say up to because you might do less if you're staying in school. And like this next bullet talks about, there are scholarship opportunities and for high achieving students or students that have certain pieces of the academic profile together, your GPA, your test scores. And I will tell you, I give the example here of the Hope and Zell Miller scholarships. Um, when you have those in-state scholarships, you have to look into the details of them, because my son had the GPA, or thought he had the GPA to get the Hope Scholarship, because he had the GPA that was required. But then he learned that he had the overall GPA, but they actually wanted the GPA of the core courses. And he didn't meet the requirement for the GPA for the core courses. So get really deep, or dig a little deep to figure out what that criteria is. So Jonathan did not get the Hope Scholarship that he thought he was getting going into his freshman year, in 22-23, but he had the opportunity to make the appropriate GPA happen his freshman year, and he did it. So this is his second year, sophomore year, in college, and he was able to get the scholarship. So given that as a tidbit for you to know and remember, that even if you have those in-state scholarship opportunities, which most states do, so know that and look into that as you consider the schools on your list. If you are thinking about staying in state, most states have an in-state scholarship. So look at those criteria. But if you're thinking about Um, if you're open to in-state and out of state, that's gonna grow your list a little bit. You can do as few as 9 and do, 3 in each of the categories of reach, match, and safety. Or you can do as many as 15, and that's getting up to 5 schools in each of those categories. So I like students to stay within that 9 to 12, not to go too far, because you also have to consider the application fees that you are paying for these schools, applying to these schools. So you want to be strategic about how many you apply to, and not just doing it just to have a big list, but really having a list that makes sense for you. And then the last thing to know here is, like, if you're thinking about doing one of those, an Ivy League or really selective schools, you're going to up your list a little bit more, 15 to 20, because you want to make sure, if you're going for a few of those Ivy League schools, that you have enough schools outside of that category to feel good about that you're going to get in, and have some options when it comes down to it, because those admissions rates are getting steeper and steeper at the highly selective schools. And that makes it more challenging for kids to get in, and therefore you just want to make sure you have a well-rounded list to make sure you're going to get into a school that is a good fit for you, and not be devastated because you don't get into some Ivy League. So the next thing for you to consider is, what what's this school about? What's their mission? And what and how, does that matter to you? Do you want to be somewhere that is um, connected to your faith, or do you want to be somewhere like a Morehouse or a Spelman that's single sex? Do you want to be at the big state school, like I talked about, Gabby, thinking about UCLA? You might want, that might be a thing of yours, to go to a big state school. There's specialized schools in several categories, as you can see on here. So think about, like, is there something that pulls at your heart? Is military something that is in your family background that interests you? So you might want to consider military schools. But that's something for you to consider. If there's something on your heart, to some place you want to be in terms of the mission that they serve as a school, that should be a consideration. Yeah, this gets back to, what being clear about what the admissions process looks like. Um, is it this highly selective institution that we just talked about, and therefore the hoops to get through are tough? Is it easier to get into for a different program? I will tell you, a lot of students here in the private schools in Georgia for some years were being directed to do agricultural programs. And they were being directed to do those programs because there were scholarships attached to them, and they were easier to get in because those programs were working to fill the directed money they had around them. So just think about those types of things when you're thinking about admissions. Is it something specialized that may make it easier for you to think about admissions to, because you're connected to that thing? And all the other admission considerations that we talked about in a previous webinar. Of course, this one, what does it cost? In my I get into the details of the what it cost to send Gabby to Pepperdine, my oldest. And that was a financial journey for myself and my ex, because my ex had decided that he paid for private high school. So he put made the decision that college, they were on their own. And that was a contention point for us because I know my parents made the investment in me to help pay for what my scholarship didn't cover at Notre Dame, and I had the same commitment for my kids. But that cost me as a parent. So knowing what your family is comfortable paying for, knowing, having the conversation as a family to have your child or student understand that this is the first major financial investment in them as a young adult. Going to college is an investment, a financial investment. It is as important and a financial investment to, from my consideration, as your first house. People will make the investment into a home, but I think college is the first major investment that you make into yourself if you're the student working to pay for school, as a family if your family is making that investment, or the combination. So you want to know all about the cost and have the conversation and discussion as a family about what it costs. So that matters into, does this school make it on your list? Because you need to weigh the considerations of that cost. Next up, we talked about what, what it looks like academically to get in, but now we're talking about what does the academic life look like for students once they're accepted. What's their graduation rate? What's that freshman retention ratio? You want to know how many students to faculty. If a lot of the classes are being taught by teachers' assistants instead of professors themselves, like that stuff you should look into. And that information is housed generally on the school's website, or you can ask admissions officers. But you want to know that kind of information. What are you going in? What does the academic life look like for you as a student once you're accepted? Social life, like this is one of those um parents and students have some different criteria around them, this category, but I do think it's important that students go somewhere, consider somewhere where they can grow socially, because college is about personal development just as much as it is about academic development. So you should be going somewhere where you're safe, where you feel safe. You should be going somewhere that has some extracurriculars you're interested in, which means you got to do the research about what extracurriculars are offered. Are there lots of student leadership opportunities? Is the campus active in terms of student voice? Those are all things you want to know about a place, about a school, about a college as you are considering it, because it is the place that you're going to be for the next 4 years possibly. So you want to know what it's going to be like to be walking around that campus all day, every day, what it looks like to be involved academically, but also outside of academics, because developing as a well-rounded person means you need to be considering more than just the schoolwork. Yeah, now we're going to get into the demographics and how inclusive a school is, because that matters nowadays, in my opinion. It always mattered, but I think it matters even more now since we have more awareness about inclusivity. So, how big is it? We just talked about the Gabby considering UCLA, which is a huge school, but ending up at Pepperdine, which is more of a medium-sized school, around that 10,000 mark. And then there are small schools which get to that 1,000 or 2,500, 2,000 to 2,500 number. When you are going to school, smaller schools, right, you'll have more a more relationships with the professors and leadership than you will at a large 10 to 20,000 student school. You won't have as much access to or intimate access, like quicker access to the college professors and the leadership. It takes a little more work for you to put in effort, and I think at the smaller schools, because it becomes more relational, the support looks a little different. What is the general campus atmosphere? Or is the school tight knit? Is it so competitive that it it keeps you on your toes? You need to know that kind of stuff before you walk into the environment, because it also that impacts who you are mentally. It impacts who you are emotionally. So you need to know what kind of community you're walking into. Some more things to think about in terms of what that school atmosphere is like. Um, do you want somewhere that feels that has sororities and fraternities to help you find your small community? I could tell you Notre Dame did not have sororities and fraternities, but you may want to be at an HBCU or a school like Georgia Tech, where there's lots of sorority houses, fraternity and sorority houses on campus, and you can stay there. You want to know what life looks like after graduation. A friend of mine said to me, and I thought this was extremely interesting and true. Going to college, a part of that is that investment you're making is you're making an investment in your alumni network. You're making an investment in the people that you will be able to connect to once you graduate. So I can say that being a Notre Dame graduate has opened many doors for me. I have doors that I didn't even know they were opening because the name carries something with it. So people will identify with me being a Notre Dame graduate, and then that makes some connections. And that's the same with any school. Any alumni network you are going to be able to use. So that's a part of the investment that you're making. And I encourage everybody to use that network, especially when they graduate. What does it look like for kids that graduate in terms of how many go to grad school, in terms of how many get a job? You want to know what the average salary of kids that are coming out of that college is making, and all of that information is available in general research terms, or like I said, these are questions you can ask the admissions officer. And then while you're considering all of those things we just talked about, and we're wrapping up here, so this ain't a long one tonight. The one really concrete way to make sure that you get a real handle and a real feel is to do that college visit or do that college road trip. If you can afford it, make some plans to use your summer or use your spring or fall break to visit some schools, especially if you're going to consider staying in state. Taking a drive um, matters. Go ahead and get on the campus, see what it feels like, see how big it is. So it's not just in your imagination. So go there, sit there, have lunch there, feel what it feels like to be at that school. Talk to people who go to that school if you can make the visit there. And if you can't, there are other ways to do that or get some of that feel. You can actually connect with the admissions office, ask them to connect you with an alumni or a current student to have a conversation with. And the other thing that is very widely given now are there are websites that will give you a 360 tour online of the colleges and give you a feel so you can see that online if you're not able to make the trip to the school. And so I encourage you to do that with each school that you put on your list. Do that visit, whether it's virtual, whether it's in person. Have a conversation with someone that goes to that school. Do not put a school on your list and not have a conversation with somebody who is connected to that school. And it for me, I can tell you, because I was a part of the Black alumni of Notre Dame, you can ask to speak to a Black alumni. You can, someone who graduated, if you want, or an Asian Pacific graduate, because I could tell you Notre Dame has a Native American, African American, Hispanic American, Asian, Native, African American, Hispanic. Yes, there are all of those diverse groups, and more recently there's an LGBTQI community, a diversity alumni group. So you can talk to someone from any of those groups and have a conversation with them. And I encourage you to do that, because there is no reason not to get some questions answered about this school that's on your list. That's the things you should be considering when you are looking at how to build that college list. And that brings us to me opening the floor for any questions, as we are at this third and final webinar of this fall series. So opening it up, any questions come up for anybody?
I have a question that might be off topic though. Do you recommend that they do a prep course for like the ACT or SAT, like their junior or their summer between junior and senior year? Like, what are your thoughts on prep classes for doing those standardized tests?
Yeah, I think prep classes can be a great thing, honestly. They help you focus in or learn the areas that you need the help in. But before you take that prep class, I would explore, like, there are some free resources like Khan Academy that exist that a student can do and not have to do those paid courses. So I think you explore the non-paid ones for sure. If you want to pay for them, have some clear idea of what the students' weakest spots are so they know where they want to focus when they're going into those prep courses. And then the other thing is, I say this all the time, standardized tests really students become better at them the more they take. So I always recommend students to take them early. Start them even in the 9th grade, like they do that PSAT, but as soon as you get in the 10th grade, take it once or twice, because the more you take it, the more comfortable you get with it, and they just get better at it. So that's my take on standardized. Beppy, Watson family, anything else from y'all?
I don't have a question, but I'll just say, as a parent who went through this before my days of now mentoring students, that just being on campus, it's amazing. Like, you'll walk onto 2 different campuses and they don't feel that different to you, but the kids seem to know immediately if they feel like it's a comfortable option for them. And I know for my kids, a lot of it had to do with like what the kids were wearing. They went to North Springs, which is a very diverse, creative school, and and they didn't like the campuses with cookie cutter, like where the kids had the same thing on. They liked more artsy stuff, but just depending on what you want. So
No, I think it's great to get on those campuses on the list, if you can. And there are organizations and schools that coordinate trips, right? So I know there's an organization, being from New Orleans, like there are schools that take trips up here to the Atlanta schools, to check things out. So if there's the same thing done in the Northeast, I know there's trips that are coordinated to go out to the Northeast schools. So those options exist, and if you can get on a campus, again, especially if you're in state and it's a drive away, get in the car and do it.
And we did a drive with a group of kids and parents, and not all the parents could come, but that was really nice because like we weren't so focused on our child. They could be with their peers, and then the parents could kind of hang back, and that ended up, and we all stayed together in hotel rooms. It saved on the cost.
Yeah, shared the cost of that, because it's an expense. It's an expense, and in the college planning process, is a budget buster. So you got to be real clear about understanding, as we talked about, how many schools you're applying to, because those dollars add up. Being intentional about taking the trips to the schools, because that's an expense. All the taking the tests. So we just talked about standardized tests. That's another expense. And if you factor that in for a few years, which I think makes, I always recommend getting comfortable. So certainly taking them every year of high school, if your school's not doing it, because my kids' school did the PSAT for them, but I also had them do the actual courses. So those expenses add up. But again, knowledge is power. So if you plan for it and you know it, and that's why having these conversations matter, because then it doesn't become a surprise. It's like, okay, we can plan and make sure this happens.
And the resources that you offer, yours are very well priced. I've looked at lots of other options, and after listening to all three of your webinars, I would highly recommend you as a resource. And I will definitely be recommending you to families that I know that are now going through this, because just the friction in your family, or the mistakes of applying to places that aren't a good fit or aren't a good option, both emotionally on the student and financially. So
thank you for saying that, though, because that was purposeful to be affordable. Again, I'm doing this because I'm creating something that I feel is a service to my community. So I'm not trying to be the thousands of dollars, because that's exactly how much they cost, thousands of dollars.
They do.
But I've structured it in a way that makes sense too. There's the DIY portion of it. So you get the workbooks, and then you get some accountability hours with me, because that's what it comes down to, like putting the information in your hands that you need, but then taking the accountability, which is the chasing that the parents have to do out of their hands, and giving it to somebody else. And I made that doable for both the student and for me, because I think when you put them on the right path, give students the expectation, they will live up to the expectation without the constant nagging. And so I didn't want to set up something where I'm nagging kids. I wanted to set up something where it's in their hands, their responsibility. They have a resource checking in on them and being accountable to, and at the same time, just taking them through the process. So thank you for saying that, Beppy, and I appreciate you. I'm loving that you're saying this, because I literally put on a personal my Facebook post this week that I do a message, inspirational message, once every couple of weeks, and I said, I'm just thankful for the people that speak well of my name in the rooms that I'm not. And so you are literally telling me you're gonna speak well of my name in rooms.
I'm grateful that I've been connected with you. So you're a phenomenal resource. So thank you for letting me participate.
No problem, no problem. So if that's it, y'all will see one more email from me, which will have the links to all
Excuse-
3 webinars. And
Hello.
I'm going to send y'all a survey. Okay, I'm going to let you ask your question. I'm going to send y'all a survey. So I want y'all to make sure y'all fill out my survey for me. All right, you got a question for me?
So I came to your last one about the college essay.
Yeah.
I don't like, where do I have to go on the college website to get the topic that I have to write about for the essay? Or like, how do
So,
I do?
yeah, so it depends on the school. I don't know if you're doing the Common App. So I'm not sure if you are applying to the school that you're interested in through the Common App. If you are, you're going to do find out if the school accepts the essay from the Common App. But sometimes schools want the Common App essay and an additional one. So you just have to go to the school's website or go into the Common App and see what their requirements are for an essay. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And here's the deal. All of you guys have my email address. So you are not leaving this series without a way to get in contact with me if other questions come up. So reach out if you need to. All right.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
You are welcome. Anything else? This is the countdown. 3,
Thank
2,
you.
1. Thank you. And I'll see y'all in internet land. Look for my survey and fill that out for me. And look out for the spring if y'all are interested in that. Have a great evening. Bye.
Thanks.